Today we are joined by the mouthpiece of the Uganda Civil Aviation Authority, and that's Mr. Luggya Vianney, the Public Affairs Manager. Mr. Luggya, thank you so much for sparing time amidst your busy schedule to be with us here today.
Yeah, greetings to the viewers. It's a great pleasure for me to join you.
Okay. I would first of all want to understand who is Mr. Luggya and what exactly do you do at Uganda Civil Aviation Authority?
Vianney Mpungu Luggya is the Manager Public Affairs at Uganda Civil Aviation Authority. I have been working with UCAA since May 2002, and I joined as a Public Relations Officer, grew through the ranks to Principal Public Affairs Officer until I became Manager Public Affairs in 2017, a position I hold to date. And prior to that, I started my career journey with a stint in a PR and advertising agency called MCL McCann, or Media Consultants. I worked 3 years with the agency in the late 90s, and we had various clients including Uganda Breweries, Century Bottling, Interplast Uganda, among others. And as an agency, we were involved in running campaigns and events for those client companies. I recall when we opened the Coca-Cola plant in Mbarara, that was one of my first experiences in PR, and it was quite interesting many years ago. Okay. And after the agency work, I joined Uganda Telecom for 1 year, from where I joined Uganda Civil Aviation Authority in 2002. But prior to that, at the university, I was engaged in a lot of writing for the media houses. I had a stint with the Crusader newspaper, which is now defunct. I used to write a Sunday Vision column titled Chase with Luggya for about 3 years while at university, and I also wrote some articles in the Monitor as well. Sure. So it has been quite a journey.
It's been really quite a journey. But then I want to understand, in your earlier years in school, is this something that you pursued, public relations?
While in school at Namiriango College, my dream was to become a journalist. I used to admire journalists like Charles Onyango Bo, and I wanted to have my byline on 2 articles in the newspaper. But when I reached university, so at Namiriango, while most of the people who were doing literature, history, economics had law as the first choice, for me I put mass communication as first choice right away, and I was vindicated because when it came to Makerere, I had narrowly missed law, but I was on the list for mass communication. And those who had put law first and mass communication second, while they had the points for mass communication, they couldn't go in because by then the university was only taking 20 students on government sponsorship. So I was lucky because I'd given it first choice. I was admitted for mass communication. And while the dream was to become a journalist, while at the university, I realized that probably public relations is what I would prefer, because we had to specialize in the final year. Yes. I don't know whether it is still the case.
It is still the case because yes. I majored in public relations in my 4th year.
Yes. So it is at university while I did the internship with media houses and also did a lot of writing while there. I realized that PR is what I wanted, and fortunately my very first job was in PR and with an agency which really gave me the footing that I required.
So, Mr. Luggya, growing up and even your journey through school, is the aviation sector something that you had your eye on, or other professions?
No, I did not. I must be honest, I did not have an eye on it at all until while working with Uganda Telecom, I saw an advert in the newspaper. And I applied like any other Ugandan. We were about 12 people who did the interview, and I was lucky that I got the job. And of course, that also takes away the myth. Most people think that when jobs are advertised, that it is not. But I applied and advertised and sat an interview. Yes. So it's not something that I had planned to do, but once I entered, I initially thought I would do 2-3 years, but while in there, I found the aviation industry to be quite interesting.
Okay.
And I'm still learning.
Okay, so this is a point where we actually get to switch a bit into Uganda Civil Aviation Authority. What is the history of this authority vis-a-vis the history of Uganda's aviation sector? Where have we come from as a country?
Uganda Civil Aviation Authority was established in 1991. However, the aviation industry is much older than that.
Sure.
The first flight to land in Uganda was in 1927, and it was an aircraft coming from Wilson Airport in Nairobi to deliver mail as part of the mail delivery network and system back then. During the time, it was a flying boat that landed at Port Bell in Luzira on the shores of Lake Victoria. It is said that there were fishermen back then who were nearby at the landing site, and when they saw this flying boat landing on water for the first time, eyewitnesses say that several of them scampered for dear life, thinking that these were ghosts from the sky.
Mr. Luggya, why do they call it a flying boat?
Yes, because it was both an aircraft as well as a boat, an amphibious aircraft. So that's why it was landing on water and not on a runway.
Yes.
So, amphibious aircraft. That is 1927. Of course, since then, the industry has since evolved to actual aircraft as opposed to flying boats. Yes, so that was 1927, first flight. And later on in 1936, the first airstrip, Kololo airstrip, was constructed at Kololo. It was about 1,000 meters by 30. And since then, the airstrip at Independence facilitated independence celebrations that were held at the airstrip. And since then, it has gone on to host several other government functions, as you see even during current times.
Yes. So back at the Entebbe International Airport, I do understand initially it didn't have the word international. So before it got that status, what did it look like? How big was it? What planes landed there? And how did it get to expand to what we see today?
Entebbe International Airport was constructed in 1947 and commissioned in 1952 by Queen Elizabeth II. After commissioning it, she used it to fly back to the UK, where she was actually crowned Queen of England after commissioning Entebbe International Airport. Back then, it was actually a fairly busy airport in the East African region. The colonialists used it quite a lot. There was the British Airways Overseas Corporation that operated comets that were flying from South Africa, transiting through Entebbe to the UK, among others, as well as South African Airlines. So it was actually a busy airport in the region. It was preferred by the comets back then because of the elevation of Entebbe at 3,748 feet compared to Nairobi, which was at 5,000 feet. That was considered too hot. So Entebbe actually from the beginning was quite a busy airport in the region and on the African continent back then.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, from that very short commercial break. And you're still rocking and rolling with us right here on the Aviation Blueprint with me, Olivia Nakalembe. We left off on a note where Mr. Luggya was still filling us in on how we have evolved as a country in regard to our aviation industry. Mr. Luggya, the colonial times looks like were a very eminent time for the evolution of Uganda's aviation industry. Let's pick it from right there.
Indeed they were. After the construction of Kololo, the colonialists also established other aerodromes across the country, including Arua, Gulu, Kasese, Soroti. They also established an aerodrome at Jinja and Tororo to mainly handle the Industrial Revolution at the time. Besides the aerodromes up country, when it came to the 40s, we had the first airline established in Uganda, East African Airways, in 1945, and that was established by the three partner East African states, Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. And aviation operations in Uganda were under the East African Directorate of Civil Aviation at the time. Then in 1967, Uganda became a contracting member of the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, the global body that oversees aviation operations across the globe. That was a key milestone in the history of Uganda's aviation, because since then, as members of the global body, we were required to comply with international standards and recommended practices set and stipulated by the global body. And we have continued to date to be members of that global body. But besides that, still in the 70s, we had Uganda Airlines established for the first time, and it had very vibrant operations, conducting both domestic and regional and international flights, until it was unfortunately disrupted by a number of things. There was the Liberation War in 1979, where the Tanzanians, while they were liberating Uganda in that war, destroyed one of their aircraft, a Boeing, in 1979. But prior to that, there was an accident that they had in Rome in, I think later on, in 1988, and a series of other historical developments until the airline folded and was liquidated in 2001. It was only revived recently in 2019, as you know, and it is going very strong at the moment. But looking back in the 70s, aeronautical infrastructure that had been put in place by the colonialists and others that built on it was unfortunately dilapidated at a point in time, partly due to wars in the 70s and a number of other administrative issues. So owing to the dilapidation of infrastructure, the East African community had now wound up. They have formed what was called the Directorate of Civil Aviation under the Ministry of Works and Transport, and it was the one overseeing aviation operations for quite some time, until such a time when government deemed it prudent to establish Civil Aviation Authority, and it was through an act of parliament established in 1991 with a major mandate of revamping aviation operations in the country while following international standards and recommended practices as stipulated by the global body ICAO. So since then, UCAA has been in place and undertaken a number of infrastructure upgrades till to date when they are running operations. Of course, there were also a series of other developments that further disturbed our industry. You recall the 1976 raid on Entebbe, where Israelites came to rescue hostages, Israeli hostages that had been held captive at Entebbe owing to some political tensions at the time. When they did come, they destroyed a number of aeronautical infrastructure at Entebbe. There were a number of MiG fighters that were destroyed in that battle. But besides that, the building, which was the control tower, where these Israelites had been kept hostage, was riddled with bullets. We have since kept that structure. Even when we refurbished the old airport, we kept that structure intact for tourism purposes, and with a plan of making it an aviation museum in future. So you see that building preserved with the bullet holes that it suffered as a result of that rescue mission, a very historic one, where the commander of that rescue mission, Jonathan Netanyahu, was shot dead in front of the control tower, and the spot where he was killed was marked. To date, we get tourists, especially from Israel, visiting that particular spot. But also the building, there is a placard that tells the story of what happened then, how they were rescued, and tourists, especially Israelites, are very much interested in that particular spot when they visit Entebbe International Airport.
So, Mr. Luggya, given that conversation that we have just had, what was the situation like when there was a freeze in our aviation industry? So, in case someone wanted to travel outside the country, what did they do then?
No, besides the interruptions here and there, probably due to political instability, the aviation industry continued running.
Okay.
It continued running. It was only interrupted by the war, the time of the war.
Oh.
But when there wasn't war, the airport was actually operating.
This brings us to the trends that have informed resurrection of our aviation sector after it had been frozen for quite a bit of time. What are some of these trends that have spoken to, the resurrection of our aviation
sector? There have been a number of things in the history of Uganda's aviation industry. Besides those that I've already touched on, for instance, after CAA had taken over in 1991, one of the major activities was Uganda's hosting of the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in 2007, CHOGM. When Uganda hosted CHOGM, Commonwealth countries, including the Queen of England and others, a number of infrastructure upgrades had to be undertaken.
Sure.
For instance, the runways were revamped, the aircraft parking apron was expanded so as to be able to park as many jets as possible, a minimum of 40 jets at the time. That apron has since been further expanded and can now accommodate many more. We had the terminal facilities expanded, including the arrivals hall and departure hall, so as to create more room for arriving and departing passengers. And we also acquired a new air traffic control radar in 2007, all ahead of Uganda's hosting of CHOGM, among others. We have since continued to upgrade this aeronautical infrastructure since the days of CHOGM, but passenger traffic also continued to increase. The amount of traffic that we had prior to hosting CHOGM almost doubled a couple of years later. And most recently, when Uganda hosted the non-aligned movement and G77 plus China summits, that is in January 2024, we had more delegates coming to the country for those particular summits, and passenger traffic has continued to grow. While in 1991, for instance, at UCAA's establishment, we had a paltry 6,600 international passengers going through and departing Entebbe International Airport. At the turn of 2024, we had a total of 2,240,000 international passengers. And that was still an increment from the 1.93 million passengers that we had the previous year, 2023. And also higher than the 1.57 million that we had the previous year, 2022. There were also other disruptions like COVID-19 pandemic, which hit the globe in 2019-2020, and operations at Entebbe International Airport were suspended, especially commercial passenger operations in March 2020 for a period of 6 months. And they were only reopened on 1st October 2020. While commercial passenger operations were suspended, cargo traffic as well as evacuation flights and repatriation flights continued, but those were the fewer ones. Repatriation was just bringing back Ugandans who were stranded abroad, and evacuation involved taking foreigners who were caught up in Uganda back to their home countries. So those were very limited operations that were not bringing in revenue as much as commercial passenger operations would ideally do. So the COVID-19 pandemic was a major disruption to Uganda's aviation industry, which had grown steadily to the extent that in 2019, prior to the outbreak of the pandemic, Entebbe International Airport was handling an average of 5,000 passengers per day. And at the time, that was the highest figure ever. Now, when 2020 COVID arose, the numbers hit an all-time low. Passenger traffic in 2020 was hardly there. 2021 and 2022 were years of recovery. Fortunately, by 2023, Uganda's passenger traffic had recovered much faster than had been projected by international bodies like UCAA and other African bodies.
Ladies and gentlemen, we shall be taking a very short commercial break. And when we return, we shall be speaking to the challenges marred in the aviation sector, but also what key solutions will Mr. Luggya be suggesting for us to be able to deal with these challenges. Just keep it right here at the Aviation Blueprint. We'll be right back in just a sec. Even the biggest of aviation industries and sectors do experience a bit of hiccups here and there, and Uganda's aviation industry is no exception. This brings us to the challenges, Mr. Luggya. From your experience, the 20 years that you have garnered in Uganda's aviation sector, what are some of the biggest challenges we are experiencing, not only in Uganda, but Africa's and East Africa's aviation sectors?
Yes, one of these is the cost of aviation fuel. Aviation fuel is quite costly, especially for a country like Uganda, which is landlocked, where we have to get it from our neighboring countries. So that cost is high for airlines.
If I should ask, how much does a liter go for? And say, for example, on average, say a day, a month?
No, the prices keep changing. I may not have the prices offhand.
Okay.
Remember, we are not the direct consumers of this fuel. It is the airlines that consume it.
True.
But the fact that the journey to get it to Entebbe is longer, because we have to, the ship docks at Mombasa and we have to wait for trucks to deliver it at Entebbe. Certainly makes it a little more expensive than what it would cost in a country that gets it directly. And that normally contributes a lot to the cost of the air ticket, because it's a very big cost for airlines. But besides aviation fuel, we have the issue of land for expansion, limited land for expansion. Entebbe being located in a peninsula, we are surrounded, the airport is surrounded by water. So it means that there is limited space for expansion of the airport, unless if you reclaim the lake, which will bring you into conflict with environmentalists. But also the other land that is near us.
Yeah, that is on this other side.
The land that is near us, part of it has, for instance, when you look at Chibungu, there are a lot of settlements there. So the room for expansion is a little bit limited, and that is a challenge. Yet you need adequate land to put in place all the plans that you may have in terms of expansion.
Okay.
But besides land, not only for Entebbe, even upcountry aerodromes, by the way, we've been grappling with a lot of compensations wherever we've tried to expand on some of these aerodromes. So that is a major challenge. Then the other issue is Entebbe is located in a bird sanctuary. And part of it is in the path of migratory birds from Europe. And yet birds pose a big challenge to aircraft and can lead to aircraft accidents. In case a bird collides with an aircraft taking off or landing, it can cause tremendous damage to the aircraft engine, which is very expensive, but not only damage to the engine, it can lead to disastrous accidents, like has happened in some countries.
Yeah.
So we have a team in place at the airport, a unit dedicated, bird hazard control unit. It is dedicated to scaring away birds prior to a takeoff or landing on every flight.
Wow.
So you can imagine how busy they are. Now the fact that it's a bird sanctuary, you're not even supposed to, so we can only scare them away. But as soon as you scare them away, they are back. Then we have the neighboring communities whom we are trying to sensitize through stakeholder engagements in terms of their habits. For instance, fishermen nearby on the lake,
Yes.
and markets, they are in terms of birds, the things that are bird attractants, remains, for fishermen, what they do, and the fish remains, and then the markets and all that. So the bird attractants, we are sensitizing them to limit, and we are working with the municipal council on that. So that is quite a costly and engaging exercise, but something that we have to live with. In the past, we used to have a challenge with the taxation regime, but through engagements with government, some of those have been sorted out.
In terms of the human resource, a couple of times we have been told the human resource is not enough, but also too, the budget allocation, which will speak to future investment or even current investment in the aviation sector, is very limited. Please speak to those two challenges.
Okay, starting with the human resource. One, aviation is a highly technical industry. So even when you recruit staff, you need to incur very high costs in terms of training, and most of those training, aviation specific training for technical staff, most of it is conducted outside the country, and that is quite costly. For instance, when it comes to air traffic controllers, there are some ratings that they are supposed to attain, and we undertake that training from outside the country, so that whoever is recruited as a controller is trained to the level of having those particular ratings that are required. Not only controllers, but even technical oversight staff that inspect aircraft are also supposed to undertake very sophisticated training. So all that makes it quite costly, and it requires resources. Then, in terms of revenue, UCAA collects revenue. What we collect is what we spend, and the amount of revenue you get depends largely on the passenger traffic as well as operations in terms of cargo that you have. In terms of revenue, what we collect at Entebbe International Airport through the various charges is what we spend, what we inject in the industry. But it is largely dependent on the passenger traffic as well as cargo traffic. Airports that have higher passenger traffic levels definitely have higher revenue than we do. But also the economics of airports dictates that what you collect from a specific airport, you are supposed to invest it in that particular airport and not any other. Okay. So while Entebbe sustains itself, the other upcountry aerodromes, we do not have adequate traffic that can enable us to get any revenue that can be reinvested in them. It is certainly not sufficient. Even when you look at the busiest upcountry aerodrome of Arua and Chisoro, which is second busiest, what we collect from there is a drop in the ocean. Often we have to subsidize in order to maintain routine maintenance. We have to pick revenue from Entebbe to be able to maintain those aerodromes. So that is a major challenge. So quite often for upcountry aerodromes, government, mainstream government comes in to subsidize by giving us something to assist with maintenance. But even while we get that, it is still not sufficient because aviation infrastructure requires very huge investments. But we continue to work together with government in order to mitigate. And in that regard, some work has been done at some of these upcountry aerodromes. For instance, last year at Chisoro Aerodrome, we upgraded the runway, taxiway, and apron. And it is much better. People flying there have a better experience than it was. For Jinja Airfield, as I speak, earlier this year, HE, the president, commissioned works for upgrade of Jinja Airfield, and the contractor is on ground undertaking works at Jinja Aerodrome. We also signed the memorandum of understanding with Sharjah Chamber of Commerce for undertaking works at Kidepo Airfield. So there is hope that that too, some work is going to be done. There are other aerodromes like Arua, Gulu, and Kasese, which as part of the National Aviation Master Plan were earmarked for upgrade to international status. That has not happened because it is subject to availability of funds, which funds are not yet available, but some preliminary work in terms of engineering designs and detailed master plans for those aerodromes, Arua, Guru, and Kasese, have been undertaken. as we await funds.
It's cheaper to travel to Dubai than to travel from Uganda to Zanzibar, which is, on the African continent. Speak to that challenge and what could be done to cut back.
So some of those cannot be dealt with just by a single country, but it requires a discussion at regional, continental, and global levels. That discussion is ongoing. The Africa Civil Aviation Commission has come up with some interventions which continue to be discussed, and one of them is what they have called the Single African Air Transport Market, a proposal to which several countries have signed up, where they believe that it will make air travel a little bit cheaper, whereby countries with national airlines those airlines will be operating almost as domestic flights between different countries. So they anticipate that with the signing up and the eventual operationalization of SATAM, which is the Single African Air Transport Market, it is likely to make air transport a little bit cheaper. So that's one of the mitigation measures that are being discussed.
Let's speak to some of the achievements that we have registered as Uganda's aviation sector.
For instance, the global body conducts international audits on countries regularly, and Uganda has just undergone two audits. One was the safety audit and another security audit. We first underwent the safety audit in September the other year. That is the Universal Safety Oversight Audit Program, continuous monitoring approach, and Uganda scored 72.1%, which was above the global and regional average. But besides scoring highly in the safety audit, important to note is that Uganda did not register a significant safety concern in that audit. When a country registers a significant safety concern, it means that airlines flying to that country will be doing so at their own risk. Now that is very risky. When you register that, it means that some of the international airlines that are flying to your country can actually shun your airspace, and that is very dangerous. As soon as we finished the safety audit, the country underwent the security audit in January last year, and that is the Universal Security Audit Program, continuous monitoring approach. And again, Uganda did very well. We excelled by scoring 81.6% in that audit, again higher than the global and regional average. Still, we did not register a significant security concern in that particular audit. So that means that it's first of all a vote of confidence in Uganda as a country in terms of our safety and security oversight systems. And when that audit is conducted on Uganda, it is not only conducted on Uganda Civil Aviation Authority, it is conducted on the state, meaning that while they check the systems of the regulator, UCAA, they also visit the industry, which is the airlines licensed by Uganda Civil Aviation Authority. And that includes the national airline, as well as other airlines that we license. And they check their systems to see whether they are compliant with the standards and recommended practices that have been established and with the regulations that we have put in place. So that was very important and a key milestone. We have also, as a country, continued to engage in bilateral air service agreements. And as I speak, we have a total of 58 bilateral air service agreements between Uganda and other countries. Now, bilateral air service agreements establish relations for connectivity between the two states. So whenever you have more bilateral air service agreements, it means that there is potential to open up more routes with other countries. The national airline, of course, is being facilitated to continue opening up more routes. They are now flying to Dubai, Lagos, Mumbai,
we actually run a story
South Africa.
London has also.
Yes, very soon London will come on board.
Sure.
Yes, so that also is very positive signs. Whenever you have a direct flight with a country that, for instance, UK is among has for a long time been among the top 5 destinations for people departing Uganda, UK, Dubai, Nairobi. So whenever you have direct flights between your country and those countries that people from your country frequent, it facilitates the industry very much so. Then in the area of air navigation, we have had a number of milestones. For instance, we have now adopted use of new technology, which is the Global Navigation Satellite System. Previously, we were more reliant on terrestrial facilities, including air navigation equipment that is on the ground, for instance, instrument landing systems, among others. While these facilities are still relevant and necessary, and we still use them, and not to mention the infrastructure upgrades that are going on at Entebbe, the runways were revamped. We put up a new cargo center that was completed in 2021. It has capacity to handle 100,000 metric tons of cargo per year. And of course, cargo traffic has been growing. Last year, 2024, we handled 67,000 metric tons of cargo. So the capacity we have in the new cargo center is still adequate. We also opened the new modified terminal for use by departing and arriving passengers. It was first used to facilitate NAM and G77 delegates last year and continues to facilitate passengers. That ambient structure that many people have been showcasing on social media. But we have not stopped at that. There is another new terminal building that is being constructed. The public has not yet used it. It is expected to be completed later this year. When that new terminal is completed in the course of this year, it will enhance the total terminal capacity from the current maximum of 2 million passengers a year to at least 3.5 million passengers per year. So that will enhance the passenger experience, and we continue to upgrade facilities. Also, one of the other major things that is drawing a lot of attention is the use of drones. Yet drones are highly restricted, not only in Uganda, but in the region and in many other countries. There is a procedure that someone can go through to have their drone licensed, but that procedure is currently protracted. It has safety approvals and security approvals. Highly protracted, but understandably because of the dangers that drones can pose, not only to safety of aircraft, but also to security of the country. So going forward, we are already working on what we call unmanned aircraft systems traffic management, UASTM. Drones are also referred to as unmanned aircraft systems. So what we are looking at in going forward is a better way of handling this process with less restrictions while taking care of the safety and security considerations. So that discussion is ongoing. We appeal to those that have them, because there is now a law in place already that makes it illegal for you to use it without getting permission. So we appeal to the users of drones who have them illegally to come forward and register them with Uganda Civil Aviation Authority, so that they are guided on what requires to be done to get the formal approvals, so that when they get you with it, they don't confiscate it. But since there is a law in place, it is also illegal. So you'll actually be facing the law. So it's better that you come up and we guide on what needs to be done.
Any other technological or inventions that are outside the technological innovations that have taken place in the aviation?
Yes, maybe the other thing that is attracting a lot of attention is the reduction in carbon emissions. So countries are adopting measures and implementing, and regulators are guiding airlines on measures that are aimed at reducing carbon emissions by aircraft, reducing noise, and that is now the way forward. Whenever you're upgrading and expanding infrastructure, it means that there are a lot of opportunities for contractors. Even jobs are coming. For instance, when you look at the new airport that we hope to have, Kabalega International Airport in Hoima, It is expected to be completed in August this year.
Yeah.
The work is being undertaken by the Ministry of Works and Transport, and on completion, it will be handed over to Uganda Civil Aviation Authority for operationalization. So we're already working with them, and this is also an opportunity that is there. When the airport is completed and is to be operationalized, it will require staff, and we are not going to shift staff from Entebbe to that airport. We will need new staff that are trained and highly technical, performing the same roles like those that are operating at the airport. So there is a lot of opportunity in the sector. But even with the current space, for instance, Entebbe International Airport alone, UCAA employs 1,400 plus staff. But when you add all the other stakeholders operating at the airport, we are between 5,000 to 6,000 people employed at the airport, working on shift day and night. So the aviation industry presents a lot of jobs and opportunities.
Wow.
Looking at students now and those aspiring to join the industry, fortunately, we now have a number of aviation training schools that have been licensed. In the past, we had only Soroti, but now there are several other aviation schools that are offering aviation training in some courses. But besides the aviation training schools, the nature of the aviation industry and how broad it is, someone does not necessarily have to go to an aviation training school to work in the aviation industry. There are a lot of professions in the industry that require practitioners who have competences in other professions. For instance, I did not train specifically in aviation. We employ lawyers, a lot of engineers. Uganda Civil Aviation Authority alone employs a lot of civil engineers, electrical, telecom engineers, all the engineering disciplines. They are there and handling very technical aspects. IT specialists are extremely key. We have seen how technology is taking over. Airports are now talking about self-check-in kiosks. In terms of immigration, we are now having automated border control systems. It is also there at Entebbe, where you just come with your passport and swipe. So all these systems need to be manned by professionals who are not necessarily trained in aviation, but probably IT disciplines. So all that these different disciplines that exist in this world can actually work in the aviation industry.